Imagine you're a soldier. You're given one last, desperate order. Hold this island, never surrender, never die. We will be back for you. The year is 1944. Your name is Hiroo Onoda. You're an intelligence officer in the Imperial Japanese Army. You land on Lubang Island in the Philippines, ready to fight to the last man. The war ends a year later, in 1945. But nobody tells you. For the next 29 years, you will continue to fight a war that is long over. This isn't a movie plot. This is the 100% true story of Japan's last World War II soldier. When American forces retook Lubang Island in early 1945, most Japanese soldiers were either killed or surrendered, but not Onoda. He and 3 other soldiers melted into the dense jungle, convinced the fight was not over. Their new life became a brutal cycle of survival. They lived off the land, foraging for coconuts and bananas, and occasionally stealing rice and even cattle from local villagers. For them, these villagers weren't civilians. They were enemy collaborators. The war was still very real. Back in Japan, the surrender was signed, the country was rebuilding, and peace had returned. But on Lubang Island, Onoda and his men were ghosts, waging a phantom war. In October 1945, they found a leaflet. It read, "The war ended August 15th. Come down from the mountains." They dismissed it instantly. An enemy trick. A clever piece of American propaganda, designed to lure them out. Over the next few years, more leaflets would be dropped, thousands of them. They found letters and photos from their own families, urging them to come home. They saw Japanese newspapers detailing the new, peaceful Japan. All of it, they believed, was a complex, elaborate enemy ruse. Their training had been clear. The Japanese Empire would never surrender. Therefore, any evidence to the contrary had to be a lie. The years turned into a decade. The 4 men became 3 after one soldier, weary of the fight, surrendered to Filipino forces in 1950. The remaining trio Onoda, Corporal Shoichi Shimada, and Private Kinshichi Koza continued their mission. They maintained their rifles meticulously, kept their ammunition dry, and continued their patrols. Their existence was a constant, low-level conflict with the local islanders. They saw patrols of Filipino police as enemy scouts. They sabotaged local farms. They were soldiers behind enemy lines, and any local was a potential threat. The islanders, understandably, saw them as dangerous criminals, thieves, and murderers. Skirmishes were frequent and often deadly. Then, tragedy struck. In 1954, during a clash with a search party, Corporal Shimada was shot and killed. Now, only 2 remained, Onoda and Kozuka. For nearly 2 more decades, the pair held out, their world shrinking to the jungle paths and the shared conviction that Japan was still fighting. They listened to shortwave radios, twisting news of the Korean War and the Vietnam War into proof that the global conflict was simply continuing under a new name. They were isolated, but their resolve was absolute. They were fulfilling their sacred duty. In October 1972, 19 years after Shimada's death, the 2 men were burning rice stalks they had stolen from a farmer. They were ambushed by a Filipino police patrol. In the firefight, Private Kozuka was killed. He had been fighting for 27 years after the war ended. Now, Hiroo Onoda was completely alone. He was 50 years old, the last holdout of a long-dead army, a solitary ghost haunting the jungle. The death of his last comrade didn't break him. It hardened his belief that the enemy was getting more desperate, more cunning. He became even more cautious, a shadow in the wilderness. The news of Kozuka's death sent shockwaves through Japan. It confirmed that at least one more soldier, Hiroo Onoda, was likely still alive. But how could they reach a man who refused to believe the war was over? Japan dispatched search parties, blared messages from loudspeakers, and left magazines and newspapers, all to no avail. Onoda saw it all as the most elaborate trick yet. The enemy was getting closer. Then, in February 1974, something changed. A young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki traveled to Lubang. His personal quest: to find Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. Incredibly, after just 4 days of searching, Suzuki found him. He walked into Onoda's camp and said, "Onoda-san, the war is over. Won't you come home with me?" Onoda listened, but he was still a soldier. He told Suzuki he would not surrender or be captured. He would only lay down his arms if he was formally relieved of duty by his commanding officer. This was the code. This was his honor. Suzuki returned to Japan with the incredible news and a photo of himself with Onoda. The Japanese government was stunned. They located Onoda's former commander, Major Yoshimi Tonoguchi, who was now an elderly bookseller. They flew the old major to Lubang Island. On March 9, 1974, Major Tonoguchi, in a crisp uniform, walked into the jungle and met the soldier he had sent there 30 years prior. He stood before Onoda and read the final order. In accordance with the Imperial command, all combat activities shall cease. You are hereby relieved of all military duties. For Hiroo Onoda, after 10,512 days, the war was finally over. He wept. He emerged from the jungle, rail-thin, but in his full, tattered Imperial uniform. He formally surrendered his perfectly maintained Arisaka rifle, his ammunition, and the officer's sword his mother had given him in 1944. The sword was still sharp. He bowed and handed it to the Filipino president. He was pardoned for the crimes he had committed while believing he was at war, including the killing of around 30 Filipino civilians. When he returned to Japan, he was greeted as a national hero, a living embodiment of the old samurai code of duty and perseverance. But the modern, bustling, consumerist Japan of 1974 was a world he didn't recognize. It was too loud, too different. He was a man out of time, unable to adjust. He later moved to Brazil to run a cattle ranch, finding more peace in the wide open spaces than in the crowded cities of the nation he had sacrificed his life for. Hiroo Onoda's story is a mind-bending testament to the power of belief, duty, and the human will to endure. A man who refused to die for a war that had ended 3 decades earlier. An unbelievable, but true, chapter of history. If your mind is as blown as mine, smash that like button and subscribe for more insane true stories every week. We post new videos all the time and you don't want to miss them. Thanks for watching.